that actually the way to achieve prosperity is to have those key things that make a prosperous state: the rights of property, the rule of law, freedom of speech, and democracy. All of these are essential components of success. If you take a single one of them away, you find that the others are not protected. So free speech protects democracy. Democracy protects the rights of property. The rights of property are part of the rule of law. The four always come together.
Some socialists seem to believe that people should be numbers in a state computer. We believe they should be individuals. We're all unequal. No one, thank heavens, is quite like anyone else, however much the socialists may pretend otherwise. And we believe that everyone has the right to be unequal, but to us, every human being is equally important. A man's right to work as he will, to spend what he earns, to own property, to have the state as servant and not as master, they are the essence of a free economy, and on that freedom all our other freedoms depend.
So you want to tackle climate change, but you're trying to increase the population of Canada. The two don't make sense. If you wanted to reduce the main cause of climate change, according to you, you would reduce the number of human beings in Canada, not increase. Myth number one. And using the media to produce your message tells anybody all they need to know. All they need to know. A government-funded weather channel promoting climate change and what we evil human beings must endure to stop it. Do you really think human beings can stop your climate change? Do you really think we're that powerful?
Let me sort of describe my overall policy. I mean, what I've said is that we would put a cap and trade system in place that is as aggressive, if not more aggressive, than anybody else's out there. I was the first to call for 100% auction on the cap and trade system, which means that every unit of carbon or greenhouse gas that was emitted would be charged to the polluter. That will create a market in which whatever technologies are out there that are being presented, whatever power plants that are being built, that they would have to meet the rigors of that market and the ratcheted down caps that are imposed every year. So if somebody wants to build a coal-powered plant, they can. It's just that it will bankrupt them because they're going to be charged a huge sum for all that greenhouse gas that's being emitted.
But we're going to make polluters pay and put money in your pockets.
There is an imperative to put a price on pollution, and if there are costs associated with for average families, we will more than compensate those families for those costs.
Well, how are they going to do that? They talk about this rebate as if you're going to get the money back and then you're going to get a premium, so you're going to get even more money back. How do they calculate that, though? That was a part that was lost from the conversation.
Every place where we come through, there was lots of trucks. Weyburn, there must have been 250 trucks waiting, and every town that we come in, there was more joining every time. I think everybody's sick of the government that's ruining us. Other than that, everybody's just here to try get rid of this carbon tax. Why doesn't the federal government do like our provincial government? I got 20% back on my solar system. Why doesn't the federal government also give us an incentive to put this in? Instead of giving money to other countries to stop carbon, why doesn't he give everybody in Canada a chance to do like I'm doing?
We have a lot of members that are going to be negatively impacted by a carbon tax in the province of Saskatchewan. A lot of our guys rely on fossil fuels, unfortunately, to build Saskatchewan's highways and transportation networks. So there's a lot at stake here in terms of jobs and competitive advantage or disadvantage in this case for our members. We're looking at well over $1 million in additional expenses for the industry that's unfortunately going to be, offloaded onto the taxpayers because the major procurer of our service is government, whether it's provincial, federal, or municipal. So ultimately, the taxpayers are going to be, facing a heavier burden because of this.
The carbon tax introduced in Australia was not going to do anything to world temperatures because we were not going to be the leader. We weren't even being followed. The idea that Australia would be able to convince China and the United States to change their energy systems was obvious nonsense, and it became to be understood as obvious nonsense.
This piece is from CTV News, and it was posted on YouTube April 2019. It's from the Environment Minister, Catherine McKenna, says that she's putting a price on pollution, and it's a proven measure, and it is the most effective one too. And it's an effective tool, despite the fact that evidence is to the contrary in a place called Australia, but for some reason they don't want to look there. I wanted to play you this clip from somebody I personally loathe and despise, not necessarily in that order. I want to make clear this. Liberals only do one thing well. Well, actually, that's not true, to be fair. But first, they lie, and that's probably the most important one. Yes, I think it is the most important one, so we won't bother with the others. Please listen to what she says. As I said, this is back in April, even of this year. A year in which the cost of food in Canada has increased by 20%. We are not all on a government payroll, so we don't get an automatic pay rise. But in reality, they care nothing for the majority of homeowners in Canada. They only care for their base. Their base, for those of you who don't live in Canada, is large urban combines, big cities, provinces like British Columbia, Quebec, and particularly in the large cities in Quebec, and a couple of eastern provinces, also known as states. That's their base, designed to keep them in office. The vast majority of the landmass of Canada is not under their control. It is for the most part conservative and right-leaning. They, for the most part, support, for instance, the right for citizens to have arms to protect themselves, if for no other reason than from the wildlife. But enter any large city in Canada and you will find the exact opposite. All the Liberals care about is forcing upon Canadians yet another socialist burden to bear. They honestly think the economy can compete. Well, I've got news for this moron and others. The economy has slowed considerably, despite efforts by civil servants putting out fake figures that the Canadian economy is actually growing. The contrary can be seen everywhere for those who have eyes to see and watch TV and see the commercials. 0% for this, 0% for that. Well, it wouldn't be 0% if everybody was in employment and had lots of money, would it? With the collapse of the value of the Canadian dollar since 57 genders Trudeau took over a balanced budget, our exports have declined and the cost of imports into Canada has increased and is increasing exponentially. The future path is far from bright and far from clear. With that in mind, listen to Catherine McKenna, who has a nickname which she is so thin-skinned she wants to ban people from the media from using it, so feel free to use it and spread it around. She's known in Canada as Climate Barbie, an airhead, just like her perfectly manicured boss, who seems right at home at those happy parades. Here's the piece. Links on my site.
Joining me now from our downtown Toronto studio is Environment Minister Catherine McKenna. Ms. McKenna, good to have you on the program today. I know you've been making the rounds talking about this tax. You heard from a couple of people we interviewed not happy about this. How do you justify the tax to those who do not think it's fair?
Well, let's be clear. We've made sure that it's no longer free to pollute anywhere in the country, because when it's free to pollute, there's more pollution. But we're giving money back to folks through the Climate Action Incentive Rebate. So for all of those folks, I wish I could have a chance to talk to them about when they file their taxes, they will get more money back than the great majority pay. And some people might say, well, how does that work? Well, because you have an incentive to look at, if you want, how you could reduce your emissions. You could look at a more energy efficient vehicle. We've just announced a $5,000 incentive for electric vehicles. You could look at carpooling. You could look at public transit. We made historic investments or not. That's your choice. But we know life has to be affordable. And that's why we have committed by law, all money will be returned into the province. 90% will go directly to people. But let's talk about the costs of climate change. It's over $2 billion a year right now, and that's hurting people. That's hurting the same people that you're talking to. That's floods that are flooding people's homes, their businesses. That's droughts. That's forest fires that we've seen in the West, where people are worried about having their kids go outside, elderly people, because it's so polluted outside. And also that's extreme heat, where people literally died in Quebec and Ontario as a result of really hot temperatures. And those are the most vulnerable. Those are people who don't have air conditioning. Those are seniors. And so we need to take action on climate change because the costs are increasing, and putting a price on pollution, it's a proven measure. It's worked in British Columbia. It's worked in Quebec. It was working in Ontario. The economy was one of the fastest growing in the country until Premier Ford removed the price on pollution. And we can also do it in a way that makes life affordable, which is critically important.
You've got 4 provinces, though, that you had to impose this carbon tax onto. You're being taken to court over it. What about, for example, in Saskatchewan, where people say it's not fair because they don't have the options, especially in the rural areas, of taking some of these cheaper or more environmentally friendly options as they do in the city, for example? Like in rural areas in some parts of Saskatchewan, you don't have public transportation.
Well, you can look at choosing a more energy efficient vehicle. But once again, let me remind everyone that there's a climate action incentive rebate. So when you file your taxes, I know a lot of people are getting ready or doing their taxes right now. You will get the money back. We're making people pay, big polluters pay, and the money is going directly back to people to make life more affordable. We think that's the right thing to do. It's part of any credible climate plan because it can't be free to pollute in one province. Pollution doesn't know any borders. This is an issue of national concern, of international concern, and it is the most effective tool we have in our toolbox. And so we need to do that, put a price on pollution, but of course, better increase public transportation. We're making historic investments, phasing out coal and investing in renewables. Energy efficiency. We have programs across the country so that people can take measures to make their homes, their businesses more efficient so they can save money.
Just for a moment, because we're running short on time. Mm-hmm. And you talk about how BC has said, it works for BC. But as you point out, if the rest of the provinces don't come on board, it's for naught if the other provinces can pollute at will. But looking at it on a more global perspective, if Canada's on board eventually with carbon tax and fighting environment, but the U.S. isn't and they're not meeting their targets, again, if everybody's not on board, it almost feels like it's for naught.
Well, first of all, over 50 countries have a price on pollution. I was just in California. California is not just like any other state. It's the 6th largest state in the country. They have a price on pollution. So do states in the eastern seaboard. We all need to do our part to tackle climate change. And it's not a race to the bottom. It's a race to the top. It's the countries that are taking action to move to a cleaner future, that are creating the incentives for people to choose clean choices. I've seen amazing Canadian solutions across the board to reduce emissions, and those are creating good jobs. We need to take action on climate change. It's costing us, and it's just going to cost us more. And we want to be the country that is leading the way in providing clean solutions, but of course in a way that makes life affordable. So go file your taxes. You'll get your climate action incentive in the 4 provinces.
Ms. McKenna, Andrew Scheer says he will cancel the carbon tax if they get elected this fall. Do you think this is going to cost you politically?
Look, there's going to be a choice in the next election. Andrew Scheer, it's been over 330 days since he said he'll have a climate plan. He has no climate plan. And in the 21st century, if you don't have a plan to tackle climate change, which is imposing costs that are even just growing, and not helping to foster the clean solutions, you're going to lose. The environment and the economy do go together. And we've got a plan that we believe works for Canadians, that makes life affordable and takes the action we need to do to reduce our emissions. Conservative politicians from Premier Ford to Andrew Scheer do not have plans to tackle climate change. They don't have plans to grow the economy.
Environment Minister Catherine McKenna, thanks for joining me today.
You're welcome.
Okay.
I just want to add something right on the end here. If you listen to what she just said, it is the same UN garbage regurgitated time and time and time again. They're like automatons, these people. If we don't do something, the world will come to an end. If we don't do something, the world will be flooded. If we don't do something, the world will be set on fire. If we don't do something, we will all be washed away. The winds of the world will unite and wash us off the planet. These people are insane. They are totally insane to think that human beings can have that much effect on a planet, short of a nuclear bomb, which could have an effect on the planet. There have been statistics prove that a certain number of nukes let off could destabilise the axis of the Earth, and that would be beyond catastrophic. But whether you drive a V8 or a V1, an electric roller skate, or ride a bicycle, it makes not a jot of difference. Now, the quality of air, yes, but what they don't address is where are these electric cars made? Where do the batteries come from? Where are they recycled? And most importantly, where does the power come to run these electric cars? When they've closed down all the coal power stations, they've closed down all the gas power stations. Where does the power come from? Where does your food, where do your fertilizers come from? They just don't answer those questions because they don't have the answers, because they haven't been given their instructions from George Soros and the UN. They've only got the first page of the document. If they were to read to the end, maybe they'd be horrified, or maybe they're protected and they don't have to worry about their future like you and I. When your land is taken away from you, when your house is taken away from you, when you no longer have the right to earn money, just given it, when you no longer have the right to buy a steak, eat French fries, have a Coke, or do anything you want, because Big Brother is watching you. This is only the beginning. These people, as I say, are utterly insane. And we have to stop them in every Western country. We just have to stop them. You can find more at aradio.wordpress.com, where you can find links to us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, iTunes, iHeartRadio, Gab, and email. We are also on Spotify. Just go to the podcast section and type Canadian Politics with a twist, and you'll find us. We are continuing to reach out to you, so please pass on the links. Please click on the follow button on Spreaker.com. You can listen to all our morning moments at Spreaker.com under A Radio. That's EHRADIO, A Radio. And please click on the like button. And you can now hear a weekend review of our podcasts on WHBJ-DB, News Talk Radio. Join us and many others, and you can find all our podcasts and morning moments at aradio.wordpress.com. Click on the Morning Moments tab.